The year is 2023. The room is all reclaimed wood and polished concrete. Edison bulbs hang over a long bar. A man named Julian Croft stands behind it. He holds a bottle of dark amber liquid. The label is simple, black ink on cream paper. It says, "The Worthless Plum." Beneath it, in smaller letters, Vance Orchards, established 1988. A woman in the tour group raises her hand. She asks about the name. Julian smiles. It's a practiced smile, but the story is real. He pours a small taste for everyone. He tells them to hold it. Don't drink yet. Just smell it. The aroma is complex. Honey, yes, but something else. Something wild and sharp and deep, like walking through a forest after a rain. He says, "This mead won the World Cask Trophy 3 years straight. It's our most sought-after bottle. We only make 500 a year. The waiting list is a decade long." Another man asks, "So why the name? Why call your best product worthless?" Julian's smile fades a little. He turns and pulls a framed photograph from the wall behind him. It's an old color print, faded at the edges. A woman stands beside a dented Ford pickup. Her hair is gray, tied back in a simple knot. Her hands are strong, knuckles swollen with work. The truck bed is overflowing with small, dark purple plums. They look like jewels spilled on a rusty canvas. Julian points to the woman's face. Her expression is not one of pride, not exactly. It's something quieter. It's resolve. "This was Alara Vance," he says. "The year was 1988. This was the day she drove home from the North Valley Agricultural Cooperative. The day the manager told her that her entire crop, every plum in that truck, was worthless." He said it kindly. He said it to protect her. That's the part that matters. It was the kindness that almost broke her. Because you can't fight kindness with anger. You can only fight it with your life. This channel is about people like Alara Vance, people who were told what they couldn't do and then did it anyway. For decades, quietly, without an audience. We find these stories. We tell them because they need to be told. If you believe these stories matter, subscribe. There are more people like Alara, and we are going to tell you about every single one of them. Let's go back. Let's go back to that day, March 1988. The air in the co-op office smelled of mimeograph fluid and stale coffee. Frank Abernathy sat behind a large metal desk. He was a good man. Everyone in the valley said so. Coached Little League for 20 years. Served on the church board. His handshake was firm. His advice was considered gospel. He had run this co-op for 3 decades. He had seen farmers come and go. He had seen droughts and floods. He had seen markets boom and bust. Frank Abernathy believed he understood the land, and he believed he understood the market. He saw it as his job to protect his members from their own worst impulses, from dreams that couldn't be squared with reality. Alara Vance sat in the chair opposite him. She was 34 years old. She had inherited 10 acres from her grandfather, land everyone else considered marginal, too rocky for corn, too shaded for good soy. But it had one thing. It had the plums. Wild plum trees, dozens of them, gnarled and ancient. They grew in the ravines and along the creek bed. Her grandfather had called them his witness trees. They were there before him. They would be there after him. For 5 years, Alara had worked that land, clearing brush, pruning the old trees with a reverence that bordered on worship. She learned their cycles, their moods. She had harvested her first real crop, 217 bushels, picked by hand, her hands. She brought a sample box with her. She set it on Frank's desk. The plums were small, much smaller than the cultivated Santa Rosas or the black splendors. Their color was inconsistent. Some were deep, dusty purple, Others were tinged with a raw, defiant red. Frank picked one up. He rolled it between his thumb and forefinger. He knew this fruit. Creek plums, hog plums, wild things. He looked at Alara. He saw her hope. It was written all over her face, clear as the spring sky outside his window. And he felt a pang of genuine pity. "Alara," he said. His voice was gentle, paternal. "What am I supposed to do with these?" She was prepared for this. She had rehearsed it. "They're good for preserves," she said. "Jams. The sugar content is high, and the flavor is—" Frank held up a hand, a kind, silencing hand. "I know what the flavor is," he said. "My mother used to make jam from these. It was good, I remember it. But that's not the market, Alara. The market is fresh fruit. Grocery stores. They want uniformity. They want size. They want a name the customer recognizes. I can't move these. They're too small. The color is all over the place. The yield per tree is a fraction of a commercial hybrid. This is a dead end." Alara felt her throat tighten. She had expected a low price, a negotiation. She had not expected a lecture, a dismissal. Frank leaned forward. He was trying to be helpful. He truly believed he was. He was protecting her. "Listen to me," he said. "You're a hard worker. Everyone knows it. Your grandfather was a good man. But this is a mistake. You're putting your energy into the wrong thing. Let me help you. We can get a grant. We'll pull these old trees out. We'll plant a proper orchard, something that will make you a living. In 5 years, you'll thank me." Alara stared at the box of plums. They suddenly looked alien, pathetic. She had seen them as beautiful, unique. He saw them as a problem to be solved. "I don't want to pull them out," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're my grandfather's trees." Frank sighed, the patient sigh of a man dealing with sentiment. "Sentiment doesn't pay the bills, Alara. I can't sell these as fresh fruit. The cannery won't take them because of the pit size. The best I can do—" He paused, did some math on a notepad. "The best I can do is offer you pectin price, 3 cents a pound." He slid the notepad across the desk. The number was an insult. It wouldn't even cover the cost of her gasoline to get here. He saw the look on her face. He misinterpreted it as disappointment in the price. He didn't see the deeper wound. "Alara, I'm not trying to cheat you," he said. "I'm trying to be honest. In the open market, these plums are worthless." The word hung in the air. Worthless. It was a judgment not just on the fruit, but on her work, her land, her grandfather's legacy. He delivered it with such calm, such reasonable certainty. That was the poison in it. It wasn't cruelty. It was something worse. It was pity. Have you ever been told you can't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who genuinely believes they are saving you from yourself. Their certainty is a wall. You can't shout it down. You can't argue it away. It leaves you with only one option. A long, quiet, lonely one. Let us know in the comments if you've ever faced that wall. Because what Alara did next is a lesson in how to build a door. She stood up. She slid the box of plums back into her crate. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She looked Frank Abernathy in the eye. "Thank you for your time," she said, and she walked out. She walked through the loading dock, past pallets of perfect, uniform apples, past crates of identical-looking peaches. She got in her truck. The smell of the plums filled the cab, sweet and wild, the smell of failure. She drove the 30 miles home. The whole way that word echoed in her head. Worthless, worthless, worthless. She pulled into the yard of the small farmhouse. Her father was on the porch. He was a quiet man. He had lost his own farm in the crisis of the early '80s. The bank had taken everything. Everything except this last rocky 10 acres that nobody else wanted. He had retreated into a world of books and silence. He saw the look on her face. He didn't ask what happened. He knew. He just waited. Ilara got out of the truck. She walked over to the porch and sat on the steps. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she finally spoke. He said they were worthless. Her father nodded. He looked out at the land, at the gnarled trees silhouetted against the evening sky. He stood up, walked to the truck. He reached in and took a plum. He bit into it. The juice ran down his chin. His eyes closed for a moment. He was tasting more than fruit. He was tasting memory. He walked back to the porch. He sat down beside his daughter. He put his hand on her shoulder, a hand calloused from a lifetime of work that had, in the end, come to this: 10 acres of someone else's failure. When the bank took our place, he said. His voice was rough, like stones in a riverbed. They took the combines. They took the big barn. They took 400 acres of prime bottomland. They took everything they could put a price on. He held up the half-eaten plum. They didn't take this. They didn't take the dirt. They told my father this soil was worthless too, good for nothing but pasture and scrub oak. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her. The dirt is enough, Ilara. He said it so quietly. It was not a battle cry. It was a statement of fact. The dirt is enough. It was the truest thing she had ever heard. That night she didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table. Her grandmother's old recipe books were spread out before her. The pages were stained and brittle. The handwriting was a looping, elegant script from another time. She found the section on plums: plum butter, plum leather, plum wine, plum chutney, things people made when they had no market, when they had only what the land gave them and their own 2 hands. The next morning she began to work. She didn't have a processing kitchen. She had her own. She didn't have a commercial press. She had an old cider press her grandfather had built. It was rusted solid. She spent a week taking it apart, cleaning each piece with wire brushes and vinegar, greasing the gears, replacing the old canvas filter with cheesecloth. She built drying racks. She used scrap lumber from the old chicken coop. She stretched window screens across the frames. She set them up on the south-facing porch. She worked with a furious, silent energy. Her father watched her. He didn't offer advice. He just made sure the coffee pot was always full. He sharpened her knives when she wasn't looking. He was a quiet witness. She processed every single plum from that truck. 217 bushels. It took her a month. The house was constantly warm from the oven. The air was thick with the smell of simmering fruit and sugar. She made 450 jars of plum preserves. She made 200 sheets of plum leather. She filled 2 5-gallon carboys with plum wine, an experiment bubbling away in the root cellar. She was left with a mountain of pits. She dried them, cracked them open, extracted the tiny, bitter kernels. Her grandmother's notes said they were good for flavoring brandy. She stored them in a jar. Nothing wasted. The dirt is enough. When she was done, her kitchen looked like a factory. And she had a problem. What to do with it all? She took a small card table. She took an old beach umbrella. She drove to the intersection with the state highway, 3 miles away. She set up her stand, a simple, hand-painted sign. Wild Plum Preserves. Cars sped past. For hours, no one stopped. She felt a familiar shame creeping in. Frank Abernathy's voice in her head. Worthless. Just as she was about to pack it all up, a car pulled over. A station wagon with out-of-state plates. A family. The woman bought a single jar. She paid with a $5 bill. Ilara gave her $1 change. $4. The first money she had ever earned from the Plums. It felt heavier than any paycheck she had ever received. This is where the story begins to change. It's not a story about one good day. It's a story about 10,000 of them. Let me tell you about the next few years. That first year, 1988, she sold everything she made from that roadside stand. It took her until the first frost. Total profit, $1,942. Cash. She used the money to buy more sugar, more jars, and a better sign. 1989. The harvest was bigger, 300 bushels. She built a small, dedicated summer kitchen behind the house, cinder blocks and a tin roof. She bought a used 6-burner gas stove. Profit, $4,500. Cash. 1990. A young man stopped at her stand. He had a long beard and intense eyes. He wasn't interested in the preserves. He was a home brewer. He asked about the fresh fruit. He tasted a plum. His eyes lit up. He said, "This is what I've been looking for. This has character. This has terroir." He bought 10 bushels of fresh plums. His name was Julian Croft. He was 22 years old. He was starting a meadery in his parents' garage, 9 hours away. He promised to let her know how it turned out. That year, her profit was $7,200. Cash. She bought the 5-acre parcel next to her land. It was considered as worthless as her own. She paid for it in cash. Frank Abernathy heard about the sale. He shook his head, told a friend at the coffee shop, "Poor girl is just throwing good money after bad." He was concerned. He was still trying to protect her. The witness who watches from a distance. He saw her working that new land, not plowing it, but planting. She was taking cuttings from her grandfather's trees, grafting them onto wild rootstock. She was building an orchard of worthless plums. It seemed like madness. By 1995, her orchard had 200 producing trees. Her harvest was 1,000 bushels. The roadside stand was now a permanent structure, a small, neat shed. She sold her own goods and the goods of 2 other women in the county, one who made artisanal cheeses, another who baked bread. It was a micro co-op, born of exclusion from the big one. Julian Croft came back every year. He was her biggest single customer. His mead was gaining a reputation, a cult following. He called it Vance Reserve in those early days. Profit that year, $25,000. Cash. She bought a new truck, a used Ford but new to her. She paid for it in cash. The community was split. Some saw her as an inspiration, a stubborn woman who made her own way. Others saw her as an oddity, the plum lady. They repeated Frank Abernathy's wisdom. She could make so much more money with a proper crop. She was leaving money on the table. They didn't understand. It was never about the money. It was about the plums. It was about the dirt. By the year 2000, Ilara Vance was no longer a struggling homesteader. She was a businesswoman. She had 20 acres, 500 trees. She employed 3 people from the local town. She had a commercial kitchen, a bottling line. Her products were in specialty stores in 3 states. She still sold from the roadside stand. She never wanted to forget that first $4. The dirt is enough. The phrase was a mantra, a business plan, a philosophy. It meant no debt, no loans, no asking for permission. Every expansion was funded by the previous year's success. Cash. Frank Abernathy was retired now. He would drive past her farm sometimes. He saw the new buildings, the clean fences, the cars parked at the farm stand. He felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger, not jealousy. It was confusion. A deep, unsettling feeling that the world he understood so perfectly, the world of numbers and yields and market prices, was not the only world. He had been so certain, so kind, so wrong. The quiet witness. His certainty had been a gift to her, a gift of fire. It had forged her. But that's not the end of the story. Because this is where it becomes about more than just one woman and her plums. This is where it becomes a legacy. The year is 2008.
The financial crisis hits. The North Valley Agricultural Cooperative, the one Frank Abernathy had run for so long, was in trouble. It had over-leveraged. It had bet big on corn ethanol subsidies that were drying up. The farmers who had followed all the rules, planted the right crops, listened to the experts. They were losing their farms, just like Alara's father had. The co-op's board of directors held an emergency meeting. They needed to diversify. They needed new products, high-value, niche products. A young analyst, fresh out of business school, did a report. He identified a growing market for artisanal, locally sourced, organic foods. He mentioned a small but famous meadery that was winning international awards. A meadery that used a rare, wild plum from their very own region. He tracked down the source. Vance Orchards. The name meant nothing to most of the board, but one older member remembered. Isn't that old man Vance's granddaughter? The one who took over that worthless piece of land up on the creek. The young analyst presented his proposal. The co-op should approach Vance Orchards, offer them an exclusive contract, a premium price. They could brand the plums, create a whole product line. It would save them. The board assigned the task to their newest, most ambitious buyer, a young man named Ben Carter. Ben was excited. This was his chance to make a name for himself. He drove out to Vance Orchards. He was impressed by what he saw, the neat rows of trees, the pristine processing facility, the bustling farm store. This was a serious operation. He found Alara Vance in a greenhouse, tending to seedlings. She was in her 50s now. Her hair had more gray. Her hands were the same, strong, capable. Ben introduced himself. He launched into his pitch. He spoke of market trends, of synergy, of the mutual benefit of a partnership. He offered her a price per pound that was 50 times what Frank Abernathy had offered her 20 years earlier. Alara listened. She did not interrupt him. She just watched him. Her gaze was unnerving. It was not hostile. It was ancient, like her trees. When he was finished, the greenhouse was silent, except for the sound of bees. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Come with me," she said. She led him from the greenhouse to a small, clean office. The walls were lined with books, not business books, books on botany, soil science, history. She sat behind a simple wooden desk. She gestured for him to sit. She said, "I was in your office 20 years ago, March 1988. A man named Frank Abernathy was the manager. He was a good man. Everyone said so." Ben shifted in his chair. He had heard of Abernathy, a legend. Alara continued. "I brought him my first harvest, from my grandfather's trees." She opened a drawer in her desk. She pulled out a ledger, the old-fashioned kind, bound in green leather.
She opened it to the first page. The entry was dated March 15th, 1988. It read, "Co-op offer, 3 cents per pound. Reason? Worthless." She slid the ledger across the desk to Ben. He looked at it. He looked at her. He was a smart young man. He was beginning to understand. This was not a negotiation. This was a history lesson. Elara spoke again. "Mr. Abernathy told me he was protecting me. He told me to pull out my trees. He told me I was wasting my time. He said it with kindness. He was certain he was right. There is nothing in the world more dangerous than a kind man's certainty about what you are capable of." She turned a page in the ledger. "This is 1988. Profit, $1,942. She turned another page. 1995. Profit, $25,000. She turned another. 2007. Profit, $210,000. She closed the book. The silence in the room was absolute. Ben Carter felt small. He felt like a child. He had come here to make a deal, to save his company. He had walked into a story that was bigger and older than any deal he could imagine. He finally found his voice. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry." Elara gave a small, sad smile. "Don't be," she said. "Your co-op did me a favor. It taught me a lesson I could not have learned any other way. It taught me that self-sufficiency is the only real freedom. So, no, I will not be selling my plums to you, not for any price. But I will tell you what I will do." She leaned forward. Her voice was clear and strong. "Next year, I am starting a new co-op, the Vance Heritage Cooperative. It's for the small growers, the ones who are growing the odd things, the forgotten fruits, the worthless crops. We will provide a market for them. We will provide processing facilities. We will not tell them what to plant. We will ask them what the dirt wants to grow. If your members are interested, they are welcome to join. If they can learn to listen to the land instead of the market." Ben Carter drove back to the co-op. He knew he could not save it. It was built on a world of certainties that was crumbling to dust. The North Valley Agricultural Cooperative filed for bankruptcy a year later. Frank Abernathy lived to see it happen. He passed away in 2010. He never spoke to Elara again, but the people who cared for him in his final years said he kept a jar of her plum preserves by his bed. He never ate it. He just looked at it. The physical artifact, a testament to a truth he recognized too late. The Vance Heritage Cooperative, however, thrived. It became a model for a new kind of agriculture, smaller, smarter, more diverse. Elara didn't just build a business, she built an ecosystem. She established the Vance Grant, a scholarship for young agricultural students who wanted to study native and heirloom species. She funded research into drought-resistant wild crops. She mentored dozens of young farmers. She taught them about soil, about water, about the quiet art of observation. And she taught them her father's mantra, "The dirt is enough." Julian Croft's meadery grew too. His worthless plum mead became a global phenomenon. He sourced all his plums, and later other fruits, from the Vance Heritage Co-op. He became Elara's greatest champion, telling her story in every interview, in every tasting room. Which brings us back to today. Back to the bar with the reclaimed wood. Julian Croft holds up the photograph again. He points to the woman. Alara Vance passed away 2 years ago, peacefully, in the house her grandfather built, on the land everyone said was worthless. She left the farm and the business in a trust. It's run by the employees and the co-op members now. Her will stipulated that a portion of the profits would fund the Vance grant, forever. That's a legacy. It's not just about proving one man wrong. It's about building a world where that man's certainty no longer has the power to crush a dream before it can grow. It's about creating a system that values the wild, the unique, the thing you can't easily put a price on. Julian sets the photo back on the wall. He picks up his glass. Now, he says, you can taste it. The people in the room lift their glasses. They drink. And in the complex, wild, beautiful taste of the mead, they taste the story. They taste the rocky soil, the stubborn trees. They taste the decades of quiet work. They taste the sweet victory of a woman who was told her life's work was worthless, and who replied, not with words, but with a harvest, year after year after year. One of the original trees from her grandfather's time still stands in the center of the orchard. It's gnarled and scarred. Half of its branches are dead. But every summer it still produces a small crop of the sweetest, deepest purple plums. There is a small, simple bronze plaque at its base. It doesn't have her name. It doesn't have any dates. It just has 4 words. The dirt is enough. We live in a world that is constantly telling us what is valuable, what is worth our time, what is a good investment. It tells us with the kind, certain voice of Frank Abernathy. It tells us it is protecting us. Right now, somewhere, someone is being told their passion is a dead end. Their idea is worthless. Their land, their talent, their dream is not commercially viable. Maybe that someone is you. The story of Alara Vance is a reminder that the most powerful things often grow in the places no one else is looking, that the limitations others place on you are not walls, they are invitations. Invitations to find a different way, to build your own table, to trust the dirt beneath your feet. If this story means something to you, if you've ever felt like Alara, let us know in the comments. Tell us about the worthless thing in your life that you refused to give up on. And if you know someone who is standing in their own co-op office right now, listening to a kind person tell them what they can't do, share this story with them. Sometimes hearing that someone else made it through is the only thing you need to take that next step, to go home, to open the old books, and to begin the long, quiet, beautiful work of proving them wrong. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next story.